number of treaties. And what you should know is that there's 7 treaties that are called human rights treaties. Some say 8, but I'll say 7 because that's a nice biblical number there, and I'm down with those kind of numbers. But we got 7 treaties, and only 3 of those treaties have been ratified by the United States. 7 treaties, 3 have been ratified. Of a couple of them that have not been ratified, and I'll put the ones that have been ratified up here earlier. A couple of them that you would think the United States would want to be ratifying, but they haven't touched it. There's one that has to do with the rights of the child. You would think that since they're snooping around in your Google searches and your Yahoo searches to see if you're trying to beam up some kiddie porn, this is what they said. This is why they want to violate your civil liberties and your privacy. To do that, you would think, with that kind of effort being led by Alberto Gonzalez, the head of the Justice Department, that you would think that they would have ratified a treaty that has a specific clause within it that prohibits that kind of action and suggests particular sanctions and remedies when that happens. So the United States has not ratified the rights of the child treaty, which many other countries that the United States is always criticizing have ratified that treaty. Another treaty that they have not ratified, that I'm talking about Congress now, is one called CEDAW, which is the Covenant to End Discrimination Against Women. You would think, since we have had women be on the political ticket of both the Democratic and the Republican Party at the highest levels that you could think of in terms of running for office, that a woman is now running the House of Representatives, that there's a woman who might be the next president who comes right here from this area. You would think with all of that woman power that there would be at least an effort to ratify a treaty that guarantees that discrimination against women is ended. And might I say that in both of these treaties, that the rights of incarcerated children are included in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that the rights of incarcerated women are included in the one that has to do with the discrimination against women. Now, enough of those. Let's look at what the United States has ratified and see what the possibilities are. Okay, well, this is easy. C-A-T, CAT. That's the Convention or the Covenant Against Torture. The United States has ratified that. This is the one that they were taken to task about just 12 months ago, pertaining to what the practices that were going on at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo. But what you must know about the practices that they were doing at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo, they've been doing in the California penal institutions at the adult and the juvenile level. And when I was in Switzerland last year, there were people who came there who found that many people had been violated, and many people had been upset by this as a result of torture practices. Another one, CERD, C-E-R-D, CERD. That's a convention to end all forms of racial discrimination. This actually was the first human rights treaty that they ratified in 1963. We know what kind of things were going on in 1963 in this country. Birmingham was going on. The assassination of Dr. King, not Dr. King, but Dr. King's main support in the White House. That is what was going on. I think Medgar Evers, he got assassinated that year. We know that police dogs were being sicked on children and people who were demonstrating for their civil rights, that the fire hoses were turned on people because of fighting for their civil rights. And in the midst of all of that, the United Nations put together and the United States ratified this particular treaty that has to do with racial discrimination. And then there's this one, and this is the one that we were in Switzerland last year and here in New York dealing with, the ICCPR, which is the International Covenant on Civil and political rights. This is one that has 26 separate and distinct articles to it. And these articles that are in that particular one actually cover things that are in both CERD and in CAT. That is to say, there are provisions in this one that had to do with racial discrimination, provisions within this one that also had to do with torture too, and also provisions within this one that have to do with the rights of incarcerated people. Are you detecting a bit of a theme here in terms of the human rights that we have? So then as I summarize this particular point and move on to the other, last night someone asked me when I was speaking at Fordham University, they were asking me, well, what's the difference between civil rights and human rights? And really there are no differences, because whatever civil right you have are encompassed in all the human rights that you have. But if you take all of the civil rights that you have and the remedies that are suggested as a result of the violation of those civil rights, and you take the CAT treaty and the rights that you get from that, the CERD treaty and the rights that you get from that, the ICCPR treaty and the rights that you get from that, you actually have more human rights than you have civil rights. But most of us don't know what those rights are. And what I would contend in is if you don't know what your rights are, then you won't know when they're being taken from you. You won't know when they're being violated, and even more sadly, you won't even miss them when they're gone, because you didn't know what you had when they took it from you. So then this is a very important thing that I think that we need to address, is that as United States citizens, we usually project onto other countries that a civil rights issue is in Bosnia-Herzegovina. A civil rights issue is in Darfur. A civil rights issue is in the Middle East or somewhere in East Timor or somewhere else in Pakistan, etc. And we only see ourselves as being covered by civil rights. But my friends, we're citizens of the world. They always talk about being a part of a global economy and a global community. Well, in that global community, the global community has human rights. So we must welcome ourselves back into the human race and claim and protect our human rights. So then a couple of more things that I point out on this. That the Rockefeller drug laws, in my opinion, are violating a number of articles of the ICCPR. And what I would say is that one of the results of having the Rockefeller drug laws is that people not only get incarcerated, but they get put into positions where they're being tortured, and they're being put into a position where they're being racially discriminated against. So when we look at what's going on right now in your prison system, from the juvenile system to the adult, we must lay a human rights framework over it, the human rights framework of the rights that derive from each of these treaties, and then we must ask, what's human rights got to do with it? If we ask the right questions, my friend, in my opinion, I think that we'll start getting some of the right answers. So then what I'm saying here is that we need to begin to think outside the box, to apply a human rights framework to things that we ordinarily only limit to those things that we get from being a part of citizens in the United States. So in the ICCPR treaty, there's, for instance, Article 6, which, by the way, is the article called the right to life. This is one of the articles that the United Nations Human Rights Committee last year found that in Hurricane Katrina, that the United States had violated the people's right to life, because it's a responsibility of a government, as they say, a state government, to protect people, to use their institutions and to use the infrastructure to protect people, because people have the right to life, and they have the right to live in a government or in a nation where those rights are protected by the systems and institutions that are sanctioned by the state. And so as we saw the systems overload and systems breakdown as a result of Hurricane Katrina, we saw the people's rights to life were desecrated and violated. Indeed, we saw that the United States practiced depraved indifference when it came to the human rights of people in Hurricane Katrina, because if they had not done that, if they had seen those people as fully human, as perhaps not 3/5 of a human being, then they would have had evacuation plans. They had evacuation plans for people who owned cars and could afford cars and could afford transportation. No plans for people who couldn't afford these things. So in our opinion, we felt that this was a right that was violated, and our opinion in that point was upheld.